Check.
Check 1 2 3. Check. Check 1 2 3. Check 1 2 3. Check. Check 1 2 3. Check. 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 Check 1 2 3. Check. 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 Check 1 2 3.
Hello. Hello. Yeah, it's fine.
Hello. Hello.
Kindly all of you settle down so that we can proceed with the inaugural ceremony. Kindly requesting you all again to settle down so that we can stick to the time. Yeah. Please. Yes, please settle down. We are going to proceed with the inaugural ceremony right now because we need to stick to the timeline. Good morning to one and all present here, respected dignitaries, eminent scholars, members of Indian Sociological Society, distinguished delegates, participants, my colleagues, research scholars, and my dear students. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to the inaugural session of the 50th All India Sociological Conference, being hosted by SRM University, Andhra Pradesh. Today marks a significant milestone in the journey of Indian sociology as we gathered to commemorate 5 decades of intellectual engagement, critical inquiry, and sociological scholarship through the All India Sociological Conference and the Society. But before we move forward, I would like to invite our respected dignitaries on the dais. May I request Dr. Biku to escort Professor Satish Kumar, Vice Chancellor, SRM University AP, to the stage? Dr. Ipsita, will you please escort Professor Maitri Chaudhary, President, Indian Sociological Society, to the stage? Dr. Bhikkhu, please lead Professor R.K. Jain, our keynote speaker, to the stage. Dr. Ipsita, will you kindly escort Dr. R. Prem Kumar, Registrar, SRM University AP, to the stage? Thank you, sir. Dr. Bhikkhu, uh, Dr. Bhikkhu, please escort Professor Shweta Prasad, Secretary, Indian Sociological Society, to the stage. And Dr. Pradhan, now you may lead Professor Vishnupad, Dean, Eshwari School of Liberal Arts, to the dais. And finally, Dr. Bhikkhu and Dr. Ipsita Pradhan, organizing secretaries of the 50th AISC 2025, kindly join the dignitaries on the stage. So to mark the beginning of this landmark occasion, we shall now proceed with the lighting of the lamp. May I request our honored dignitaries on the dais to kindly come forward for the lamp lighting ceremony. A warm welcome lays the foundation of any meaningful academic gathering. I now invite Professor Vishnupad, Dean, Eshwari School of Liberal Arts, SRM University AP, to deliver the welcome address.
Respected Chief Guest, Professor R.K. Jain, respected Vice Chancellor, Professor Satish Kumar, respected President of ISS, Professor Maitri Chaudhary, respected Secretary of ISS, Professor Shweta Prasad, our Registrar, Dr. Premar, and the two secretaries, organizing secretaries, Dr. Bhikkhu and Dr. Ipsita. All the respected and esteemed plenary speakers, MC members, RC conveners and co-conveners, all the participants. It gives me extraordinary pleasure to welcome all of you to the 50th All India Sociological Conference hosted under the auspices of Indian Sociological Society at Eshwari School of Liberal Arts, SRM University, Andhra Pradesh. It is all the more exciting and meaningful since this is the 50th annual conference, the Golden Jubilee Conference, in other words. This is no mean achievement by any stretch. It is a true testament to the enduring resilience and relevance of the Indian Sociological Society, not only on Indian, but also global knowledge landscape. So kudos to ISS and to the leadership team, as a matter of fact. Yeah. I wish to speak of two things today, and I'll be very brief. One is obviously the Ishwari School of Liberal Arts. Many of you must be new to, Ishwari School of Liberal Arts, not least because it's in its infancy. We started in 2018, went through the COVID years and through several mutations, and we were finally relaunched in February 2024. For the moment, it has 7 departments. We offer undergraduate programs and doctoral program. The Department of Sociology and Anthropology, which is hosting this conference, under Ishwari School of Liberal Arts, is one of the 7 departments that we actually have. Um, you know, um, I mean, I can go on and on, but you can visit the website. We also have a brochure in the kits that we have provided you for this conference. So please do look us up. I must, however, mention a couple of things about our school. Its philosophical orientation in some ways is something that we pride ourselves for. I mean, what we are interested in is in crafting and cultivating every student who joins us, to the best of his or her abilities. Yeah. We are really keen on a holistic development. We are keen on intellectual, emotional, and ethical growth of each one of them. All right. The other thing I might also quickly mention is that we also pride ourselves for the kind of facilities that we provide in this university, right? The global infrastructure that we actually have, an absolutely superb liberal arts, curriculum that we also have, and not the least, the kinds of faculty members that we have actually gathered from across India, premier institutions in India, and also outside India, from outside India. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. The second thing I wanted to touch upon a few things about this conference on mobility and inequality, right? This conference aims at 3 things. One, it aims at engaging mobility in all its ubiquity, in all its possible forms. As the conference note elaborates, we intend to engage mobility of persons, ideas, goods, aspirations, and desires. In other words, mobility in all its possible registers and dimensions. This is perhaps most apt for an emergent era defined and framed by frenzied mobility. Further, as the title of the conference clarifies, mobilities is not a standalone term here. It is tagged with inequalities. One's location along axes of class, gender, race, caste, region, religion, language, and nationality, to name some of the most obvious ones, determines one's capacity to move, to be mobile. Inequality is central to the question of mobility and its obverse or lack. The second thing that it proposes to do is to think through the very epistemic adequacy of the very discipline of sociology as a framework of knowledge with its multiple paradigms in engaging questions of mobility and inequality in ever-shifting and ever-evolving context. The third thing, and I think this possibly is the most important question, and that is that what is at stake in a conference such as this, right? I think it's the very question of justice, or more precisely, mobility justice, as the conference concept note indicates. If we were to entertain a parallax shift in the Zizek'ian fashion, we must see that under the signifier mobility justice, an inextricable reference to democracy, or rather two democracies being made. I'm very fond of a 2018 book by the British philosopher David Runciman, where he provocatively declares, and I quote, that democracy is dead, except that the news hasn't reached us, end quote. So the question for us in this, so the question for us is, if this were to be true, what is at stake in thinking through mobilities and inequalities? Are we mere reporters, archival bureaucrats, as Foucault would say? Or are we striving for someone or something else, perhaps for mobility justice? Hopefully, it's the latter. So welcome again. ESLA is most delighted to host this conference, to host all of you here. Let's have 3 days of most engaging conversation, very fruitful discussions, and let's hope critical insights would emerge from these 3 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor, for your warm words of welcome and for situating the conference within the broader academic vision of SRM University AP. To move forward, to acquaint us with the theme, significance, and vision of this landmark conference, I now invite the organizing secretaries of 50th AISC 2025, Dr. Biku and Dr. Ipsita Pradhan, to speak about the conference.
Uh, Good morning, one and all. On the dais, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor C.H. Satish Kumar sir, our Registrar, Dr. Prem Kumar sir, our distinguished keynote speaker for the conference, Professor R.K. Jain sir, ISS President, Professor Maitri ma'am, ISS General Secretary, Professor Sweta Prasad ma'am, my Dean, ESLA, Professor Vishnupur sir, and one of the co-organizing secretary for the conference, Dr. Ipsita Pradhan. Of the dais, respected deans and directors, head of the department, faculty members, non-teaching staff, and student of SRM University AP. For the conference, respected plenary speaker, guest speaker, MC members, RC conveners, co-convener, faculties, and research participants. I extend a very warm welcome to all the distinguished personalities on and off the dais, whose presence adds immense value and prestige to these occasions. It is my great pleasure to welcome to you the 50th All India Sociological Conference 2025, organized by Department of Sociology and Anthropology, Eastwood School of Liberal Arts, SRM University AP, under the auspices of the Indian Sociological Society. Having been part of this journey from the early stages of planning, it is truly special for me to see this collective vision come to life today. We are especially happy and honored to host the Golden Jubilee of All India Sociological Conference, a milestone that celebrates 5 decades of sociological scholarship and engagement. At this conference, held from December 28 to 30th, 2025, we are honored to host nearly 1,500 delegates from India and around the world. There will be 35 research committees, 4 plenary sessions, 3 memorial lectures, and many other academic events during these 3 days celebrations. The conference theme, Mobilities and Inequality, Shifting Context and Changing Paradigm, resonate deeply with the questions many of us grapple with in our own work. Being part of the planning process, it has been truly inspiring to see how these themes have come alive in diverse and interesting ways through panels, RC sessions, plenaries, and memorial lectures. I'm confident that conversations over these 3 days will not only deepen our collective understanding but also inspires new collaborations, ideas, and direction for meaningful future research grounded in empathy and social relevance. I look forward to rich exchanges and will take place during the conference. On the behalf of organizing committee, I extend my warmest welcome to all the delegates and express my sincere appreciation for your participation. I also thank the Indian Sociological Society for trusting SRM University AP with the responsibility of hosting this landmark event. This is a wonderful opportunity we value deeply and carry with great pride. I hope the days ahead are filled with engaging conversations, meaningful exchanges, and the joy of meeting each other in person. Thank you.
I join Dr. Biku in extending all of you a very warm welcome. As students of the discipline, it has been an honor to organize this platform where fellow scholars across the length and breadth of the country have gathered here to engage in critical discussions, reflections over the course of these 3 days. The theme of the conference, Mobilities and Inequalities, Shifting Contexts and Changing Paradigms, captures the complex realities of the present juncture where we are currently located in, both in geographical space and in chronological time. This is perhaps an apt time to think through our scholarship as well as rethink our scholarship and its purpose in society. Organizing these conversations through the many formats of the expansive research committees, plenary sessions, memorial lectures, roundtable, movie screening, book discussions has been an immensely demanding and yet deeply rewarding at the same time. This 50th AISC is an occasion to celebrate our discipline, which enables us to look at the society not only around us but also within us. How we have been socialized, what hierarchies do we reproduce and perpetuate, and what we have been successful to break out of. Once again, we warmly welcome you to SRMAP University. And as we bid goodbye to 2025, we also hope that this new year may bring us many opportunities to critically reflect, question the status quo, and or above all, make us more human. Thank you.
Thank you both for giving us a comprehensive overview of the conference and its intellectual agenda. Now, it is my privilege to invite a leading voice in Indian sociology. I request Professor Maitri Chaudhary, President, Indian Sociological Society, to address the gathering. Over to you, ma'am.
All right, so good morning and a very, very warm welcome to here. I was sitting and watching the the hall fill up, and nothing sort of warms up somebody who's about to speak than to see a very good and full audience. On behalf of the Indian Sociological Society, it gives me great pleasure to extend a very warm welcome to each and every one of you to the 50th All India Sociological Conference here at SRM University. I am delighted and thankful for your generous support and enthusiastic participation. For those of us here who are not as familiar with the history of the Indian Sociological Society, this is the 50th conference, but we are almost 75 years. Next year we complete 75 years. The conference in the early years were not annual, not regular. So that is a history of its own. So in a certain sense, it almost corresponds to the history of the republic that we inhabit. We at the ISS are very happy that Professor Satish Kumar, the Vice Chancellor of SRM Andhra University, Professor Vishnupad, the Dean, Dr. Biku, and Dr. Ipshita, the organizing secretaries, are all here to mark and celebrate the inaugural session of the 50th AISC. It's a matter of great pride to see the participation of scholars, young, established, veterans of ISS, new members. I know this conference will ignite academic collaboration, exchange of knowledge and ideas among the many participants of this conference. Thank you. I know also that my colleague, Professor Shweta Prasad, the Secretary of the ISS, will formally thank everyone without whose support this event would not have been possible. However, it's only in order that I acknowledge the generous help of all those that has made the commencement of the conference possible. My gratitude to Professor Shweta, my colleagues in the Managing Committee, Research Committee, the many members of the Indian Sociological Society, past presidents, many of you are here, and office bearers, colleagues, and of course, the young scholars on whom the future of ISS rests. Thank you, SRM University, Andhra, for hosting this historically important conference. The theme of the conference, as you know, is mobilities and inequalities, changing context and shifting paradigm. If one reads sociology as a discipline that emerged at the cusp of intense and far reaching social transformation, we can see that the theme of mobilities and inequalities is at the very core of sociology. The discipline of sociology emerged amidst a great deal of mobilities of people, goods, information, ideas, captured evocatively in the analytically powerful phrase, all that is solid melts into air. That was the beginning of our colonially driven modernity that unleashed unprecedented mobility and unprecedented development of its own hue. Great hope amidst intense inequalities and despair. The conceptual and methodological tools of sociology, which emerged at this cusp of this transformative moment, are thus specifically equipped to grasp this. In more recent times, however, we have the new mobilities paradigms, which emerges in response to the fact that again is very powerfully captured in a paragraph that many of you may be familiar with. All the world seems to be on the move. Asylum seekers, international students, terrorists, members of diasporas, holidaymakers, business people, sports stars, refugees, backpackers, commuters, early retired, young mobile professionals, armed forces, others, many others fill the world's airport, buses, ships, and trade. The scale of this traveling is immense. We notice it, we see it. But conceptually, there have been huge movements. You had people taking over the Americas, the Australias, but somehow that mobility did not receive the kind of cognitive visibility that perhaps the mobility of people from the global south going to the global north achieves, or people from the marginal communities to the centers of action receives. That is why the theme is called both mobilities, inequalities, and changing paradigms. Because along with the empirical, sociology is always engaged conceptually. These are not binaries, they are intrinsically, intricately tied up. Now, perhaps something that all of us feel acutely and the ever present mobile, what we call the mobile telephony, that we carry with us at best captures the spirit of our times. Mobile and unequal. Whoever has lost that mobile phone would know that sinking feeling of helplessness. For this is not the loss of a phone any longer. It's the loss of one's anchor, the rudder to life, access to work, access to leisure, friends and family, banking and ticketing, monitoring health and wealth. Everything comes to a grinding halt. The world shuts off. But this is a slice of the urban middle class everyday experience. It is about new selfhoods, new political economies, new notions of influencers, Instagrams, which bombard our consciousness today. However, even this very use of mobile is very differentially experienced in a hierarchical societies that we inhabit. It offers both possibilities and also denies new possibilities to sections who do not have the same access that we have today. We've already referred to, the Dean has mentioned the question of mobility justice. I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but definitely mention the fact that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 13, 21, 23 to 27, United Nations 1948, had mentioned mobility as a universal human rights. However, we live in different worlds. The UN is not what it used to be. And in that sense, perhaps sociology, the social sciences, the liberal arts occupy a very, very special position at this historical juncture because we are making sense of a world changing before our eyes. Now, many of you would have seen the program, the list of plenary speakers, the diverse themes that they are speaking in. We have people talking about migration, causes and consequences, identities, education and social mobility, language, digital and commodity mobilities. Many will address also how there are different conceptual frameworks to understand these mobilities. I, however, decided to speak on something very, very limited, and this is knowledge mobilities and inequalities, but primarily knowledge mobilities. The basic argument, which all of you are familiar, I'm just rehearsing. In fact, that is one of the challenges in subjects like sociology or social sciences. Our knowledge does not produce computers. Our knowledge does not produce rockets, satellites. We don't have new vaccines that we create. But we are important in the sense of creating an understanding of how these technologies can be used, can operate inadvertently, can have consequences which we have not anticipated. And today, as we live during the AI, which is taking over our lives, this becomes extremely important. The point that I'm targeting is that knowledge is mobile, it is dynamic. However, it does not travel in a flat world, which was promised to us in the 1990s. The world is no longer flat. Instead of borderless, fluid crossovers, we have walls. It's a different historical moment. The moment I started teaching in the early 1990s, it was a different world. Globalization was the buzzword. Today, already deglobalization has acquired salience, not just in the academia, but among policymakers, financial analysts, and of course, the leaders of the world today. Knowledge, in other words, is constitutive of society and in inequalities and hierarchies. These inequalities and hierarchies are both global and local. We have entrenched gatekeepers, not just at the immigration counters, but entrenched gatekeepers to decide which knowledge is valid, which knowledge is not valid, which knowledge can be recognized, which knowledge is less recognized. We have knowledge traveling with benevolent states, not too many any longer, with resistance, authoritarian regime, and social movements. There are two issues which I'll come to a little later, but which runs through the history of Indian sociology. That new knowledge emerges very often from social movements. Very often we see social movements as antithetical to the academia, to the kind of quiet, persuasive practice of knowledge which we do in classrooms. But on the other hand, if you look at some of the issues which have resonated within Indian sociology is gender, which came along with the tide of the second phase of the women's movement. New kinds of issues were discussed. I know there are many scholars here in Indian sociology of gender who are present, but discussions on household, discussion on marriage, discussion on kinship, they got reconstituted, labor, work. There we also know that there was a very, very strong anti-caste movement, Dalit movement, which reconstituted the manner in which caste was framed. Caste was always very central to Indian sociology, but the manner in which caste was reframed altered dramatically. I am hesitating to refer to names. When we have the written text, which will come out in the bulletin, obviously I would be referring to all the scholars who are present over here. So caste, gender, tribe, debates. And it's interesting because very often you feel that knowledge happens in certain ideal utopian conditions. As I stand here, not concealing in somehow both my nervousness and anxiety, we assume that knowledge can grow best when you are quiet, when you are insulated from the hurly-burly of life, when you are, in sort of protected spaces. But if you look historically, the best knowledge, whether in the social sciences, philosophy, literature, humanities, have always emerged in crisis. At a more local level, I would have imagined I would have sat and read and written a paper which would have been more detailed and exhaustive to speak to you about knowledge mobilities. But I was encountering a knowledge mobility of quite another kind, WhatsApp messages. And WhatsApp messages and visuals in WhatsApp messages when words were not suffice, they were instant, they were provocative. And the issue raises very fundamental questions of knowledge mobilities, production, circulation, reception. And I'm going to come to that a little more. But basically, the questions that I am flagging off are: how do context shape knowledge? What and whose knowledge are recognized as acceptable and what is not? Which paradigm becomes popular, sometimes even fashionable and dominant in the academia? Which paradigm remains in the margins? Put differently, whose voices get heard and registered as knowledge? If we take the case of sociology and its disciplinary history, it needs to be framed within a broader history of ideas that is itself embedded in the story of the subcontinent's successive encounters with colonialism, nationalism, developmental state, neoliberal market, globalization, and right now, deglobalization, accompanied by a different kind of triumphant and often ethnic cultural nationalism. The point that I'm making is that knowledge always emerges in context. So, in colonialism, and over here, all of you who are sociologists and anthropologists are only too familiar with the monograph, with the British colonial production of knowledge for governance. You are very familiar with that history. I'm not going to narrate it. You're also very familiar with the history of nationalism. Like I said, we go back almost very shortly after 1947 that the Indian Sociological Society was established. And post 47, the developmental state, where there were argument about knowledge, maybe for village development, community development, what kind of knowledge should be produced. We also had another strand, echoing in some ways, but also quite different, about how do we get rid of colonial paradigms, colonial frameworks. And then we had the neoliberal market within which we now are situated, where we need solutions, we need applied knowledge, we need deliverables, we need instant communication, and we need products. It is like, it is very much like the Blinkit, that you need a solution, you order a solution. But the problem of sociology of knowledge is that it's a process. There is a certain assumptions within which knowledge is produced, knowledge is researched. To go back then, I'm going to repeat what is probably my students know a favorite, return to the distinction between sociological knowledge and what we call common sense knowledge. Other words, what is called knowledge by acquaintance and knowledge acquired. Knowledge by acquaintance is just what we hear from each other, very much like the WhatsApp knowledge. Earlier, we would get knowledge from our mothers, fathers, grandmothers, grandfathers, neighbors. As soon as we were born, we would know what is right, what is wrong, how should girls behave, how should boys behave. If you belong to an honorable family, what does honor entail? And if you are supposed to be low lying, hidden from the mainstream, you'll also learn how to be subaltern and servile. This is fundamental to sociology. Some of you must be wondering that in times when everybody wants instant knowledge, instant solution, why am I going to fundamentals of sociological knowledge? I think it's important. I think it's important today to reiterate the foundational basis of sociology. And I go back to a text I know all of you read, all of you would be having it in the syllabus. That is Durkheim's Rules of Sociological Method. And Durkheim makes this very, very profound and prescient observation that human beings did not wait for the coming of social science or sociology to have ideas about law, morality, family, state, or society. For such ideas are indispensable in their lives. The moment we are born, if Durkheim describes, the baby is taught when to be hungry and when not to be, not to sleep during the day, but to sleep at night. And we learn slowly what is hot, what is cold, what is dangerous, what is not. And this becomes part of our predispositions. This also becomes ideas which are emotively extremely strong. And therefore, when anybody wants to question them, whether it be about caste or gender, various kinds of identities, we feel extremely personally offended. This is a struggle. This is a struggle which the discipline has. So, at one level, the popular perception, it's such an easy subject. All you have to is describe. It is most difficult because it is so intimate. It is about ourselves. And to analyze ourselves is always a very, very difficult task. And for that, we need to theories, we need methods, things which are often seen as dispensable and also seen as something which is separate from the empirical that we do. But like Durkheim's observations, they are not separate. They're constituted even in the word language, even in the word hunger, dirt, pollution, purity. Each of them are loaded. Each of them are loaded. They become part of our language. So we have to sort of go back to that fundamental question, because what is happening increasingly, the common sense has become legitimate. And there is a false sense of elitism. Elite people do theory, and for the others, it's not necessary. But like I said, the most profound theoretical questions often come from the margins, because that's where the crisis is, and this has to be understood. Now, I go to the other part, like I said, our long history in the 1950s. And the question in the current context, when we talk about indigenous knowledge and knowledge system, this and colonial frameworks, this is something, if you look at sociological bulletin, right from the beginning is fundamental. Look at Radhakamal Mukherjee, prior to that, D.P. Mukherjee's personality and social sciences. Look at the debates and contribution for in Indian sociology, arguments of Dumont and Foucault, neither of them Indian, but talking about a knowledge which is distinctively Indian. So even the question of going beyond Western frameworks becomes extremely difficult for people like us who are constitutive of this long history of colonialism. How do I stop speaking English or use this microphone? What we can do is use this and resist and redefine. And that's a much more complex kind of thing. Interestingly, there has been other arguments, again, not necessarily from our parts. Bailey, who said there cannot be a separate physics or chemistry for each nation or cultural group. Similarly, there cannot be varieties of sociology for each nation or civilization. We've had knowledge debates, I've talked about caste and gender, but we've had about book view and field view, about Indology and the whole question that happened, writings of M.N. Srinivas, writings of Andre Bethe, and earlier than that, the Indological tradition of Gure. We've had in the 1990s, I've already referred to, challenges to this from gender, from caste, from tribes. We have discussions then at the high end of globalization in the West on post-colonialism, and now more the decolonial turn. It's a complex issue because what is being debated there and what is being debated here is often different. We do not have similar assumptions of what we mean by decolonized or decoloniality. We don't have time here, but it's important to take this seriously. I would sort of quickly now turn to the question of knowledge. I've mentioned knowledge production, the way knowledge travels, the hurdles and obstacle, but I would also like to talk about knowledge communication. I had briefly mentioned WhatsApp because that is central. We know about WhatsApp University. We also know a WhatsApp which seems to be a kind of strategy to ruffle people, plant ideas, usually misrepresentation. Because after all, we live in post truth times, so it really doesn't matter what you put. And it is here that I want to go back, not just to knowledge by acquaintance and knowledge about, but to a question about exchange of knowledge, because knowledge has to be exchanged. When I teach in a class, I have to be understood. When I speak in a seminar, maybe where people are here without having done a sociology, I should be able to speak to them and make them understand. This is, however, not easy, not even within the sociological community, because we have misunderstandings, miscommunication. Fundamental to the sociological method is, how is this knowledge produced? Where did you do your field work? What kind of method do you use? What kind of tools did you use? But today, what people ask, who said it? Not how it was produced. Okay. So if I say something and my friends say, oh, that was great because you said it, And those who don't like me say, we don't like it, and therefore we don't believe it. It becomes knowledge by authority. That was the traditional format of knowledge in when we begin on our textbook, that sociology begin, if you remember Auguste Comte, theological, metaphysical, and then the scientific, then you question that it is, you believe me because I am the president. No, you don't believe me because I am the president. You believe me because I have facts at my hand and I have the logic of inquiry and argumentation. That is the issue, not my authority. My authority is irrelevant. 2 days later, I do not have this authority, but the facts will remain. And this is important because here we are as a sociological community. Increasingly in our country, we don't even want to use words. We use images to communicate. We use the visual to communicate. It's a tricky situation that we are in. Finally, the question that the sociologist often deals with unofficial conceptions. And interestingly, in sociology, again going back to Durkheim, crime, as you know, is decided contextually. Who decides what is a crime? It's different from how crime is defined in law. Sociologists are interested not just in the official conception, they're interested in the unofficial conception. They want to see not only how law looks upon a certain type of criminal, they want to know how the criminal looks at law. This is from Berger, Invitation to Sociology. How do they look at it? How do they navigate around it? This becomes, therefore, knowledge communication becomes extremely important. We have to ask not the authority. We should not ask who forwarded it, who said it. We have to ask, in contrast, how did this come? What is the basis of this? Can we go to the root of it? How was it constituted? So I would sort of quickly end up over here because today we live in a new world of Twitter fights, WhatsApp messages, Facebook posts, Instagrams. We have broken language barriers on one hand. You can do even quickly a Google translation and get whatever is there. But we do not realize that the sensors are still there. We are still working within echo chambers. If I have 5 people who think my WhatsApp is great, then that 5 people are getting one kind of WhatsApp. Somebody else is getting quite something else. This is narrowcasting, not broadcasting. We have to become aware of this if we do not want to go to the question of fake knowledges, fake news, fake practices. Sociology has the ability, theoretically and methodologically, to go beyond the facade, to debunk, as they say. Whereas what we have today in knowledge is we affirm, we agree. Whoever, oh, it's my people, I agree. Not my people, I disagree. That is antithetical to any notion of sociological knowledge. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor, for your insightful and thought-provoking address and for reflecting on the evolving concerns and responsibility of sociology in India. Now, we shall witness the release of 3 significant scholarly publications. First, the Indian Sociological Society volume, 100 Years of Sociology in India, Evolving Issues, Emerging Trends. May I now invite the editors, Professor Abha Chauhan, Professor A. Newmy, and Professor T. Palta Singh on the stage. The dignitaries kindly do the honors for the release. Uh, okay. Ma'am. Yeah.
I would like to thank the organizers here at SRM University, Andhra Pradesh, and the office bearers, the president, secretary, and managing committee members, each one of you, for this opportunity for this book to be released called 100 Years of Sociology in India, Evolving Issues and Emerging Trends. And we, the editors, myself, Ajalu Nimoy, Tatvamasi Balta Singh, are here. This is published by Springer in in this year on the basis of the conference held at the University of Science and Technology in Meghalaya in 2022. And this book is actually consists of 24 chapters. And as I said, it's published by Springer. We are really thankful to them, especially Satvinder for this, for her efforts. And the papers were presented during the conference, and we at that time thought that books should come out which is based on the papers presented during the conference and all those people who attended the conference. So this book consists of 24 chapters, and also divided into 5 sections: sociology in regions, indigenization sociology, sociology from margins, sociology of care, and other issues like employment, education, and environment. So thank you so much for this opportunity. My co-editors are here. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, for this momentous feat. I will now proceed to the next one. The special issue of Sociological Bulletin, Migration and Mobility. So I will invite Professor Aparna Raiparol and Professor Minakshi Thapar, the driving force behind the issue, to the stage, ma'am, please.
We'd like to invite Professor Manish Thakur as well on the stage.
I just would like to thank Professor Maitreyi Chowdhury for making this possible because, to release this here. It was a wonderful opportunity to work together with Professor Thapan. And we would like to announce that we have a discussion on this special issue with some of our authors present today at 5:45. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Raiparol and Professor Thapan. Uh, we will now move on to the third volume. So we'll call upon stage or invite upon stage Y. Shivaji, uh, the Member of Parliament representing Andhra Pradesh in Rajya Sabha. He has been involved in activism in Andhra Pradesh for a long time and hence born these books. Thank you. These publications stand as a valuable contributions to sociological scholarship in India and beyond. So now,
I am afraid I trespassed into your arena and I invited myself. And I am a seeker. It is my worry that sociology as well as social sciences are completely given a go by. And therefore, in all the technical institutes, the departments of economics, sociology, and finance, all that are not functional. Even in the state universities also, in university like agriculture universities, the economics department is non-existing. Therefore, the cost of production and the comparative prices are not workable. So therefore, and it is an eye opener, and your speech went on very well. With liberalization, sociology is much affected, and I hope that such conferences will revive once again the importance of sociology and social sciences. Thank you very much.
Please.
thank you again, sir. We are honored to have with us the visionary academic leader of SRM University AP. Now, I will request Professor Satish Kumar, Vice Chancellor, SRM University AP, to deliver the inaugural address.
Today's chief guest, Professor R.K. Jain Saab, and President Indian Sociological Society, Professor Maitreyi Chaudhary, our Registrar, Prem Kumar, Professor Vishnu, Professor Bikku and Shita, and Secretary Sweta Prasad, and other sociologists sitting on the dais and off the dais. Very, very, very warm welcome to our SRM University and also this Golden Jubilee of Indian Sociological Conference. It's our honor as a university to host such a conference. And I have two advantages. One is that I am a vice chancellor, so I'm hosting it. Another important thing is I am also an anthropologist, studied at Andhra University, Voltaire. Generally, you find very few sociologists, social scientists becoming vice chancellor in the era of technology. I think one among those specimens standing here actually. Before I think going ahead, I would let me talk about our university. It is one of those 4 universities of SRM group, where I joined a few months back. But prior to this, I was in Gangtok in Sikkim for over 8 to 9 years to establish our SRM University, Sikkim. So it was well established. And then I have given the responsibility of coming and running this university. It's an honor. It's a wonderful university. There are 3 important schools. Typically, we have management school and engineering and a very important liberal arts school. Another pillar is we are adding. We got another 100 acres allotted by the state government to start medical and allied sciences. We'll be starting. So this is about the university, and university is always into the talking about the advanced technologies. So after me joining, we are starting 2 important institutes. One institute for AI, institute for quantum technologies. AI is important. Now AI, I think we want the institute to bring AI into the social, the Israeli School of Liberal Arts, management, of course, in technology. So these are the important thing. And our faculty, we select faculty not based on the experience. We select faculty based on the exposure. So that is the funda of selecting, because faculty are the backbone of the university, and exposed faculty brings more knowledge, what Madam talks about, that knowledge mobility, we want to bring it to the university from the from other side of the world, actually. So this is about the university, and this is a research-driven, student-friendly university. So you can go around and see that it's only 30% of construction is done. Still, it's only, even though it's 8 years old, take out the 2 years of Corona, 2 years of initial, we're operationally 4 years old university with a great research publications of 2000 publications almost every year, and mostly into the Q1 journals. Uh, we are establishing center of excellences. One of the center of excellence of my interest is that in talking to the liberal arts, the Eastwood School of Liberal Arts, talking about that as a gerontology center, actually. I think many might be knowing it. Aspects, we are starting a gerontology. We thought of doing it during this conference, somehow it did not happen. We'll be doing in a big way, and we are collaborating with many such centers in India and abroad. This conference timing is very, I think, unique because now sociology, society is under transformation. Now, the sociology, we talk about that socialization is very important because being an anthropologist, I talk about the socialization that determines the societies. Now, general socialization, now we are completely migrating to, I think partially, I think soon, I think we'll completely migrate to the e-socialization. So now we are, the de-socialization determine the secondary socialization of a person, which determine the construct of a human being, even character, that is governed by the secondary socialization, diminishing the role of domestic sphere, actually, taking everyone to the public sphere. And even though we talk about that personal spaces, I think that in that society, in that transformation, this conference brings many things. Resocialization as a role, we talk about ethics and talk about stratifications. Now the era of likes, dislikes, followers, and unfollowers. We are going to, whether you like or don't like, even though we romanticize the whole past of value system, ethical system, societal system, but be ready for embrace the future. Gen Z oriented, e-socialization based societies emerging all over. I think this society might throw some light and bring more clues for us to how to manage that and changing modern perspective. Thank you very much. Once I enjoy our stay, I want to speak more, but I'm waiting for R.K. Jain sir's lecture. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor, for your inspiring address and for highlighting the role of sociology in addressing contemporary and social transformations. Honoring scholars and leaders is an integral part of any academic tradition. And we are no different. I will now invite Professor Kumar, Honorable Vice Chancellor, to felicitate our keynote speaker, Professor Jain. Thank you, sir. I will now kindly request Dr. R. Prem Kumar, Registrar, SRM University AP, to felicitate Professor Maitri Chaudhary, President, Indian Sociological Society. Now, Professor Vishnupad, Dean ESLA, will felicitate Professor Shweta Prasad, Secretary, Indian Sociological Society. May I now request Professor Kumar, Vice Chancellor, to felicitate our special guest, Y. Sivaji. Thank you, sir. Now we have the felicitation from the Indian Sociological Society for the SRM dignitaries. The Vice Chancellor, Professor Satish Kumar. Registrar, Dr. R. Prem Kumar. Dean Esla, Professor Vishnupad. Organizational secretaries, Dr. Biku and Dr. Ipsita Prasad. Thank you all. The keynote address is one of the most anticipated moments of any inaugural session. So we are deeply honored to have with us Professor R.K. Jain, our chief guest, to deliver the keynote address. Ravindra K. Jain is a former professor of anthropology and sociology and Dean, School of Social Sciences at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. He taught at Oxford University, UK, and in several universities globally. A widely acclaimed author and an authority on Indian diaspora, his monograph, South Indians on the Plantation Frontier in Malaya, released in 1970, pioneered the anthropological study of South Asian diaspora. Text and Context, the Social Anthropology of Tradition, released in 1977, is recognized as a seminal early contribution at the intersection of anthropology and literature. His recent book is titled Innovative Departures, Anthropology and the Indian Diaspora and is released in 2018. He was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award by the International Union of Anthropological and Ethnological Sciences and the Indian Sociological Society. The Asiatic Society awarded him the prestigious Annandale Memorial Medal in 2019 for significant contributions to the anthropology of Asia. So, please.
Thanks to the Vice Chancellor, SMR University, and the President and the Organizing Committee of the Golden Jubilee Conference of the Indian Sociological Society for inviting me to deliver this keynote address. The overall theme of the conference is mobilities and inequalities, and I have chosen to speak on contexts of mobilities and inequality, conjuncture, and vision. Mobilities can be understood as having two major dimensions, migration and aspirations. Migrations are internal on the one hand and international or transnational on the other. Aspirations usually have an upward phase, people aspiring to upward mobility, but these cannot be divorced from the opposite, namely people descending into abject poverty and precarious existence. Inequalities, as we all know, are implicated with both migrations and aspirations, especially the upside and downside of aspirations play a crucial role in migration as a process. The story of the combined processes of mobilities and inequalities can be told sociologically and for his heuristic and analytical purposes on three basic interlinked parameters, national, global, and planetary. This is the progression I choose to follow this morning. At the national level, inequalities of caste, class, ethnicity, gender, region, and so on are endemic. I do not wish to enter the minefields of these fault lines. Factors of both mobility and inequalities, either independently or in conjunction, define the contours of continuity and change. Rural and urban scenarios have been analyzed either conjointly or separately. Thus, we had sweeping national characterizations such as Sanskritization, Westernization, and secularization, or in the predominantly urban context, issues like slum clearance, communalism, and linkages between politics and criminality or social security have been problematized. Electoral gerrymandering, dynastic politics, and such topics have found the sociological backdrop of processes of mobilities and inequalities in both rural and urban, that is, national arenas. At the national level, again, we must confront issues such as educated unemployment and jobless growth, which directly feed into social inequalities. Metropolitan urban living is further characterized by what the sociologist Avijit Pathak has called disenchantment and the lonely crowd. Pathak writes, and let me quote, let me refer to what a hugely stratified, unequal society like ours has normalized the segregation of the rich and upwardly mobile class, aspiring class from the larger society. And this segregation manifests itself in the mode of living which the real estate industry mythologizes as a gated community, a space that normalizes the culture of surveillance and cultivates the fear of the other. Internal migrations are beset with issues on the downside of linguistic and regional chauvinism on the one hand, and on the upside, unself-conscious linguistic pluralism on the other. I'm sure a number of these things will be discussed in this conference. I have touched briefly upon internal migration. Let me now take up the topic of global migration with focus on international transnational migration through the Indian diaspora. The issue of intersectionality between mobility and inequality at the global level may usefully be viewed through the window of South Asian diasporic migration. These diasporas began in the 1830s as indentured labor migration to various ex-colonial plantation societies of Mauritius, South Africa, and the West Indies, as well as Fiji, and culminated in the mid-20th century into the colonizing countries and the USA. The last named of these were predominantly professional diasporas, consisting, among others, largely of information technology specialists of South Asian origin. The exploitative indentured labor diaspora, resulting in extreme suffering and deprivation, ended only in the 1920s. Their marginalization and downward mobility is a well-known story. One should not forget, of course, successful trading diasporas beginning in the 19th century, such as the Gujarati merchants to East and South Africa and the global South diaspora, and the global Sindhi diaspora, sorry. However, today I have chosen to speak of the mid-20th century Indian diaspora to the United States, certainly not economically marginalized, but suffering political, cultural, and psychological marginalization and precarity. A case study of H-1B visa holding Indian migrants to the United States, 2018, brings out the global race, class, and cultural fault lines of their existence as a modern diaspora. The above case study, which I referred to, was during Trump presidency 1. That was a time when convergence between the right-wing Modi-Trump governments were witness to the triumphant Howdy Modi effervescence of the Indian diaspora in the US. The media drummed up optic of the Modi charisma, then overwhelmed the Asian Indian diaspora. 2 years later, during the Trump presidency too, one sees the flip side of the above effervescence. It is worth quoting Jayat Tirth Rao in full in print August 21, 2025. And I quote, "The thriving Indian diaspora in the US has been an asset till now. The excessive publicity about Indian success stories and their high incomes and wealth levels has begun to breed envy and resentment in non-elite sections of the American populace. There might be a campaign against H-1B visas and even a gradual expulsion of persons stuck in a limbo with pending green cards and pending citizenship. It is important to remember that unlike our country where social change is slow, even glacial, such changes take place in America with lightning speed. Besides, one small change in the law can have very significant impacts. Lyndon Johnson's one change in US immigration policies in 1965 led to the creation of the present Indian American efflorescence. A similar small change in any regulation can have deleterious effects this time around." End of the quote. The lesson is driven hard The diaspora is not just about the physical movement of populations, but is crucially affected by the wider socio-political scenarios of the immigration society and receiving society. To bring this realization home in our present context, globally, migration and inequalities are moving targets subject to the vagaries of geopolitics. Against the background of weakened democracy and rising authoritarianism, a clarion call for international solidarity and sustainability was given at the Progressive International 2020 Summit, where intellectuals like Noam Chomsky, Klein, and Yanis Varoufakis laid out the threats posed by market fundamentalism, climate catastrophe, and rising authoritarianism. Having discussed the progressive international discourse at the global level, this is an apt point at which to focus specifically on the planetary level of the contemporary human predicament. I have already alluded to the deep concern with climate change and global warming signaled during the Progressive International. The conceptual distinction between the global and the planetary levels that scholars like Dipesh Chakravarti make is that while the former concerns sustainability of humanity, the latter encompasses life on the planet Earth that can be summed up as habitability. So there is a distinction between sustainability of humanity and habitability in the on life on the planet. Those who subscribe to this play between sustainability of human beings and conditions of habitability of life on earth see it in terms of our existence in the conjuncture of Anthropocene. I said in the beginning that I am going to talk about conjuncture and vision. The Anthropocene is the geosocial era that postdates the Eocene and is marked by exponential increase in the use of fossil fuels and emission of greenhouse gases. According to the estimates of earth scientists and geobiologists globally, this is an unprecedented condition of the earth's history brought about by human intervention and exploitation of nature. A number of authors, Bruno Latour, Philippe Descola, Dipesh Chakravarti, and others, have written scintillatingly on this phenomenon and come to the conclusion that, and I quote, the geosocial immanence of Anthropocene has meant that a large part of humanity becomes climate refugees for whom climate change and denial, rising inequality, and mass migration turn out to be all one phenomenon. There are some differences of interpretation between scholars researching the phenomenon of the Anthropocene. For instance, while Latour and Descola, basing themselves on the worldview of indigenous small-scale tribal societies, particularly of Amazonian Latin America, would include both human and non-human life in their encompassing view of how to deal with the Anthropocene. Dipesh Chakravarti demurs from the deep ecology view in that he stresses that human platform for action. By this, it is meant that the human beings will have to act politically, not basing themselves on the equal representation by non-human nature in ameliorative politics. This is so because there is institutional path dependency in human societies or nation states. And further, human perceptions contra non-human ones are circumscribed by emotional imperatives. Basing on such considerations, Chakravarti, at the end of his brilliant treatise, The Climate of History in the Planetary Age, gives a threefold formula to encounter and mitigate the effects of the Anthropocene. One, all human lives would need to be protected and their flourishing enabled and ensured. B, biodiversity, which makes for a habitable planet, would have to be protected. And third, processes of withdrawal from the recent human dominant order of the earth would need to be initiated in advance. In other words, the humanocentric idea of sustainability will have to speak to the planetary-centric idea of habitability. Now I come to the conclusion, which is the vision. While conceding that in deep ecological terms, between his humanocentric global vision and the planetocentric earth science, there is a logical contradiction in vision of life on the planet. Dipesh Chakravarti justifies the former in political terms, but here precisely is the rub. If we hail path dependency in humanocentric terms and valorize the institutional structures of nation states, a question arises about the elite capture of the institutions, or as in India today, the government control and subversion of civil institutions. Here, the mechanism of shifting the gears leaves a lot of desired credibility. Chakrabarti agrees with some Western commentators, for example, Roy Scranton, that we uh, that we prepare ourselves for the death of consumerist and capitalist civilization. But he further sees a beacon of hope in that the death of this civilization does not mean the death of all possible ideas of civilization. By this, I take him to mean that the Indic civilization, as envisioned by Tagore and Gandhi, for example, based on reverence for nature and an unself conscious cultural pluralism and diversity, shows a way out. Getting down to our initial parameters, namely national and global, is such a possibility a reality or utopia in the present conjuncture? Let me in the end speculate. Once we have factored in the terrestrial planetary dimension in our predicament, let us get back to the brass tacks, the empirical rather than the empiricist armature of societies around the world. I think that the polarization mentioned by Latour between the political horizons of the left and the right is more accurately configured today in the nation states of People's Republic of China, PRC, and the USA, their communist and democratic regimes respectively. The irreconcilability between the two regimes is the current folklore of political science, though as realpolitik of our times would show, there is only a thin line dividing the authoritarian autocratic regime of PRC and the communist world, and the majoritarian ethno-nationalist regime of right-wing populist democracies spearheaded by the USA. In pursuance of a way out of this conundrum, I would like to mention Tan Chi Beng's new monograph, Communalism and the Pursuit of Democracy, a reflection on the eradication of racialism and promoting social harmony 2023, which is a comparative study of contemporary communalism in USA, Malaysia, and PRC, and routes to its possible transformation from being ethnic nationalism into civic nationalist democracy. Rather than the idea of the nation state being either wholly benign or coercive, Tan tweaks the argument in a different direction. Basing on the findings of evolutionary psychology, he argues for conceptualizing an orderly nation state and the playing out of ethnies in a democratic armature of manageable conflict and cooperation between nation states. It is instructive to follow the logic of an orderly nation state based on the experience of the People's Republic of China. Contrary again to the prevailing folklore of neoliberal political science, there are two salutary features of the nation state process in the PRC as he sees it. First, public criticism of state policies may be heavily censored, yet there is amelioration of poverty, development, and what he says, ample personal freedom. Secondly, basing himself on phenomenology of the mind and of the unconscious, our author suggests how the state itself forges the consciousness of subject citizens. With these positive additional inputs from the PRC experience, there is recognition that the PRC may yet pursue the path of democracy. Conviviality at the local regional level of relations among ethnies as primordial solidarities, and European cosmopolitanism at the internation state level are the searchlight for the resolution of this conundrum. Significantly, he cites Rabindranath Tagore in this context. There is, besides the geopolitics, a moral underpinning of resolutions such as TANS. Is it too much, I ask, to speculate that the nations of an orderly nation, that the notions of an orderly nation state in PRC and this latter shaping the consciousness of its citizens are part and parcel of a deep-seated Confucian ethic? In parallel, but premised more on the just ruler, is the idea of Raj Dharma in the Indian tradition. For instance, this injunction was alluded to by the former Prime Minister of India, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, while critiquing the permissive stance of his own party's chief minister, the present Prime Minister of the state of Gujarat, in not preventing a mob of fanatics from going on a spree of rioting and killing in a communal configuration in 2002. The wider point I wish to make in conclusion is that in civilizations like the Indian and the Chinese, but practically in all religious moral systems worldwide, there is a moral and spiritual underpinning to human social justice. We may refer here, for instance, to the leopard skin chief in Evans Pritchard's newer religion and to Max Gluckman's writings on the reasonable man in Central African tribes generally. The only difference, perhaps, is that in the civilization that we speak of in the present context, this tradition is philosophically enshrined in textual form. This is the general lesson I draw from my ancillary work in the anthropology of tradition, text, and context. And then finally, there is an addendum, a disclaimer. I do not wish you to accept all that I have said as the gospel truth analysis of the situations I have commented on. There is much to be said for a spirit of dialogue, which is unfortunately not possible here. I am being a monologuist. More than myself, all you colleagues and students present here are engaged in the vital task of communicating with even younger minds and active agents. Their contexts or fields of thought and action are more immediate, but with long-term implications. If I may anticipate, your critique of the current national conjuncture would aim at the prospects of a regime change. Internationally, it would take inspiration from the example of a live diasporic Indian, Zoran Mamdani's mayoral success in New York as a foil to the reactionary plutocratic regime of Trump in Washington. Finally, at the intertwined planetary level, we should not let our planetocentric idea of habitability be obscured and masked by the climate change denial of the Trump regime and the even more insidious technological philanthropic fixes of plutocrats like Bill Gates. On the latter score, Bill Gates' memo of a trade-off between technological solutions to poverty and health issues and climate change only skims the surface symptoms while willfully ignoring the deep-seated causes inherent in the lack of a conversation between humanocentric and planetocentric crisis, between sustainability and habitability of the planet. So Bill Gates is a convenient alibi to perpetuate and protect the massive egalitarian status quo. So I think I should say these few words in the end on a lecture which I have delivered on contexts of mobilities and inequalities, conjuncture and vision. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, for that thought-provoking and illuminating keynote, which has given us so much to reflect upon as we begin this conference. Gratitude is at the heart of any successful academic endeavor. I now invite Professor Shweta Prasad, Secretary, Indian Sociological Society, to propose the vote of thanks. Ma'am.
Good morning, everyone. It's time for a vote of thanks now. But before that, we have one more surprise, and that is not a surprise, if I can say so, because it is already part of the program schedule. So, may I now have the winner of M.N. Srinivas Award, uh, Achla Gupta, Associate Professor of Sociology of Education from University of Southampton. Achla Gupta. So Achla Gupta is the winner of M.N. Srinivas Prize 2025 from the University of Southampton, but she's not physically present here to receive the award. Now moving to the duty, which is considered to be the most important duty, and I must say that I'm not very good at proposing vote of thanks, so forgive me if I miss any one of you. So, and for that, I'll avoid taking names so that I don't miss. So, we are at the end of the inaugural session of the 50th All India Sociological Conference. This Golden Jubilee conference brings into focus critical sociological concerns around migration and mobilities, drawing attention to the unequal conditions under which people, labor, ideas, and resources move or are constrained from moving. In contemporary societies, at a time when migration and mobilities are central to social change, yet remain deeply structured by inequality, this conference provides an important space to engage with questions of movement, restriction, and access. The discussions ahead during the coming 3 days, I'm sure, will advance sociological thinking on these issues, particularly from the perspectives rooted in India and the global South. With the inaugural session drawing to a close, allow me to propose this formal vote of thanks. On behalf of the Indian Sociological Society, I extend my sincere thanks to all those who have contributed to the successful inauguration of the 50th All India Sociological Conference, marking a significant golden jubilee milestone for the society. I begin by expressing our gratitude to Professor C.H. Satish Kumar, Vice Chancellor, SRM University, for the inaugural address and for the institutional support extended to the Indian Sociological Society. I also thank Professor Vishnupad, Dean, Ishwari School of Liberal Arts, for the welcome address and for the leadership provided by him and by the host institution. Our sincere appreciation goes to the chief guest, Professor R.K. Jain, for the keynote address, which set the tone for the academic deliberations of the conference. Sir has highlighted linking, in fact, taking example of Indian diaspora in the US, how migration might have its mobility might have, though it is related to aspiration and upward mobility is generally associated with the word aspiration, but it might have its flip side too, which has been beautifully highlighted by Professor Jan and talking about Anthropocene and how sustainability and habitability, humanocentric sustainability and planetocentric crisis and sustainability. So multiple terms has been used by Professor Jan to highlight the climate crisis, the environmental crisis that we are experiencing today. And he suggested Tagore's vision and Gandhi's vision as alternative to this issue of climate change and environment sustainability. And this should be the model of development, even I feel so, especially Gandhi's Gram Swaraj. And if we have that kind of model of development, probably many of the issues related to development will not be causing concerns for the humanity. So moving forward to uh, in this journey, I would like to thank Professor Maitri Chaudhary, President of the Indian Sociological Society, for her address and also for her support and encouragement throughout this journey of 2 years. I would like to highlight, in fact, I would like to inform you all that we are completing our term on 31st of this month, and thank you for all the encouragement, support, and hand holding, if I can say so. I have learned a lot from Professor Maitreyi Chaudhary. So she also, in her address, has highlighted multiple dimensions of mobilities and inequalities, starting with how mobilities is at the core of the our discipline, the discipline of sociology. But mobilities and inequalities, these are not binary categories, but they are somewhere intrinsically linked to each other. Talking about mobility of knowledge, she also highlighted it is important to know how the knowledge is produced, how it is circulated, and how it is received. So thank you for your address, ma'am. I'm thankful to Dr. R. Prem Kumar, Registrar, SRM University, for the felicitation. And I would like to place on record our appreciation for the organizing secretaries, Dr. Bikku and Dr. Ipsita Pradhan, for their extensive efforts in organizing this conference. Remember Dr. Bikku when I met him for the first time on 25th night, and he was just running from pillar to post, managing everything. And I said, you're like our research scholars of the same age, and still you are organizing such a big event, that too the 50th All India Sociological Conference. Congratulations for that to both of you. You have worked really hard. I'm witness to that. So I acknowledged with thanks the presentation of M.N. Srinivas Memorial Award to Achla Gupta, and the award I'm sure will be sent to her. And congratulate Dr. Achla Gupta for her scholarly contributions. I also extend my congratulations to the editors of the special issue of Sociological Bulletin on Migration and Mobilities, Professor Aparna Raiprol and Professor Thapan, for the special issue on migration and mobilities, and to all the contributors of the issue, and Professor Manish Thakur for being the support behind this special issue and bringing it out in a timely manner. So I thank all those who are involved in the release of the ISS volume that is based on the USTM conference, all the editors of this volume, 100 Years of Sociology in India, Evolving Issues, Emerging Trends. Professor Abha Chauhan, Professor Ajay Liu, and Professor Paltasamy Tatwamase. So all three of you, many, many congratulations. And I would like to inform you all from the dais that Professor Abha Chauhan has suggested me to bring out volumes based on 49th and 50th All India Sociological Conferences, and I have accepted her suggestion. So very soon I'll be talking to you all. So contacting you for your chapters, because her idea was that sociological bulletin explorations and this Bharatiya Samaj Shastra Samiksha, they have limited number of papers only. They can accommodate limited number of papers. So we should provide opportunity to the large number of participants who attend these All India Sociological Conferences, and very good idea, and it is accepted. Thank you and congratulations to all the editors and the contributors, and I am one of the contributors so to this volume also. So I extend my sincere thanks to the managing committee of the Indian Sociological Society for guidance, for your support, and for this 2 years journey, which we completed very cordially with your support and guidance. Thank you for being there for us. Thank you to the RC and AG conveners who are still acting and continuing. In fact, they have gone beyond. Usually, RCs are known as the backbones of Indian Sociological Society, and they have contributed meaningfully to the academic excellence within the ISS and beyond also. Through these RCs and AGs, many activities have been organized over this 2 years period. Last year it was 62. This year I'm yet to count because I'll be presenting it in GBM. So congratulations and keep up the good work, all RC conveners, and thank you for being there. And when I say RC conveners, ad hoc group conveners are included in it. So I thank all the life members also, without who are present here and who are not present here because of one reason or the other. Without you, the Indian Sociological Society has no meaning. Without your participation, this 50th All India Sociological Conference would be meaningless. So thank you all for your participation and for your engagement with All India Sociological Society. My appreciation also goes to all the eminent sociologists and distinguished guests who have joined us for this inaugural session. They are life members also. Most of them are life members. And I can see my teachers also who are present here. Professor Anand Kumar has been my teacher during my post-graduation days. So thank you for being part of this inaugural session. All the faculty members, staff, student volunteers, organizing team of SRM. I thank each one of you. I cannot forget my own team at the ISS who works behind the scene and ensures that we don't miss anything. We were just talking because we were not uh, aware. We were aware, but we were not, we had missed to felicitate from the side of the Indian Sociological Society. And it is our team who had made all the arrangement behind the scene. So thank you, Boyni. Thank you, Amrinder ji. And thank you, Marcus, for being there all the time and leading us, because they are the constant ones. We keep coming and going. So they are the ones to guide us. So thank you, all three of you, for being there. Thank you to treasurer also, Professor Vivek. He has been working diligently over the years, in over the year, in fact, I mean, over last 2 years. And he has been managing many of the things behind the scene. And thank you, Professor Vivek. I cannot see you here, but I know you are here. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for being the backbone for the society. And I would request you all to show the same kind of commitment and respect and dignified behavior for the next 3 days also, that is expected of you as a research scholar, as a student who are who have just started participating and started learning through engagements, through participation and through interaction. So looking forward to a peaceful and a very successful 50th All India Sociological Conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, for eloquently expressing our gratitude to all who made this inaugural session as well as the conference possible. Now, may I request everyone present to kindly rise for the national anthem?
विनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे